Hi, everybody. It is, oh my gosh, what even day is it? January 25th. And
Absolutely.
we're excited because, we're just always excited. I feel like I say that all the time. But we are back producing our episodes live in our Facebook group, which is a really nice return. So we are happy to be here. This is going to be episode 34, and we're talking about the intersection of our work in the three areas that we focus in, which is education, behavior change, and business development. Education, business development, and behavior change. That was a little bit better.
Absolutely.
We have a few ways of talking about this intersection, and we're going to start our conversation in just a bit, explaining to you, sharing a little bit more about what we think an embodied business is and why it matters. But first, what's in process? What's in progress? As we always like to start. So hopefully you're watching or listening on Facebook, which is so cool because you get to hear the episode long before, like 4 to 6 weeks before everybody else. So if you are watching in the group, feel free to add your comments. Let us know you're here. You can put a little emoji or icon or anything that you'd like. And it'll just be great to know that you're listening. So, and what's in process, what's in progress for you?
Alrighty. Well, it's, we're getting through the end of the first month of the year. And I think I've entered into a season of my life where there's a lot of forward planning. And I'm feeling, I think I'm just in this phase of desiring to do a lot of travel and then just sorting out the details around that.
And what's that been like?
Well, as I said to you earlier, it just hasn't been it always feels like a little bit of a hump for me to get over a little bit. And so it hasn't felt as easeful as I'd like.
Yeah. So for me, it's so interesting because I'm finding I'm in one of these spots where even though there are lots of intense things going on, both in like a positive and less than desirable way, I really feel okay about all of it. And I think that has to do a lot with the nervous system work and just a new opportunity that I'm in to learn from a group of really motivated, intelligent people working in the polyvagal theory or with the polyvagal theory in a lot of different ways. That feels, I think, energizing and grounding. But also, I've started meditating again. And I've been meaning to do it for a long time. I've been talking about it for a long time, but I started reading one of my favorite books by a woman named Susan Piver, who I had a chance to study with many years ago in Colorado. She's a writer and a Buddhist meditation teacher. And she has this great book called How Not to Be Afraid of Your Own Life. I don't know if I have it handy. It might be in the stack of books that my computer is resting on. But I brought it to Mexico with me last week and started reading it. And when I came home, I just started. And it's been really sweet. And what I find very interesting is so much of what she's talking about, and this is not new information to me, but there's something resonating in the language around creating through meditation, which is obviously just one tool that we have, space between our reactions and our responses. Like the things that tug on us, whether they are emotional first, or they are pain in the body first, or they are thinking, right, stories first, they're almost, impossible to disentangle. And yet we do become aware of one of those things as a trigger for strong emotions. And then the space that can be created between the experience and then how we respond to the experience. And we talk so much about that in the nervous system work, that becoming aware of your physiological response is the space in which you have an opportunity to behave differently. So I'm really appreciating it feels like a bit of an affirmation and a beautiful parallel. And I'm just really enjoying that. And I have every morning, I'm always like, I hope it feels as good today as it did yesterday, because it doesn't always, right? It changes. So I'm on day 3, and day 3 was not quite as yummy as day 1 and 2, but it's early. Yeah. So that's it for me. Well, I think we want to share today, for those of you who are listening live or on the replay in the group or on the actual podcast, what it means, like who we are and what we do, right? What it means to work at the intersection of education, business, and behavior change. And Anne had this brilliant idea to step back and say, well, what is an embodied business, right? Because our business is the Embodied Business Institute. So what the heck does that mean? Do you want to jump in, have some thoughts, Anne, to start us off with?
Absolutely. So someone who has been in business for herself since she was 23, and I could, say earlier. So, like selling flowers when I was very young to my neighbors is one of the stories, or working at the Renaissance Fair, and you were paid how much you earned per day. So there was just this sense of, I had other jobs too, where I was like an employee and had an hourly and everything, but I feel like I've really grown up in my adulthood, really as an entrepreneur. And I never really identified with that for a while. I really more identified with the expertise I was teaching, which at the time for many years was Pilates. But that desire to there's like some sort of ambition or drive inside of me that just entrepreneurship holds very well. And I think, I sort of lived in an area where ambition wasn't like, it was sort of like, don't play the game, like, don't be ambitious, like, step aside, like, don't. So I think I sort of, just kind of covered it up a little bit. But the thing I think about that's one story of going into entrepreneurship, is feeling this drive. And that drive is very physical. The drive that I feel inside of me, it's like a leaping out of my heart or my throat, or it's like, it feels inside of me like such a forward propulsion. And I think it keeps welling up. There's been times in my life where I've absolutely been burnt out or too busy. But it keeps coming back. It's not going anywhere. So that's one piece that I look at. Another piece that I look at and think about with the embodied business is that, a lot of times I feel like when I first learned about being a business owner or about performing well, it was sort of like, don't listen to your body, just do the business. Like there was this dichotomy, which can you go back to this concept of like Decartes Error, which is a separation between mind and body. So if the business is the mind, you just suppress the body so that your mind, even though the feeling of ambition is a bodily sensation, at least for me. It's my mind thinking the thoughts, but then I also have this forward propulsion of a sense inside of me. And so I think for many years, I didn't know how, even though I was teaching people to listen to their bodies, because I was very nerding out on this concept of perception, which can be a byproduct of teaching people mindful movement like Pilates or probably yoga or Feldenkrais or any of the somatic movement arts. It was still bifurcated. But I found that many times when I was moving, that I would come up with really inspired ideas, or that my mind would just go. Like I remember teaching sometimes, and I'd still be teaching, and I wouldn't pull out my phone, but I always had Post-it notes when I was working. And I would sometimes just pull out Post-it notes and just write the ideas. And so I think over time, I really had this sense of, moving the body, being in the body, can affect the mind. And for some people more than others, of course, we're variable. But I think that a lot of people I think many of us are not tapping into the superpower of the body and the perception and the awareness of the body to allow us to have better success within business, if that's what you want, or better success in life with relationships, with, I just think a lot of, and then someone who studied science, it was always sort of like, well, the body's like woo woo and the data doesn't back it up or science doesn't back it up. And, I respect the scientific method. I believe in it. And I also think like sometimes it's just things just haven't been studied yet. So there is no science behind it.
Yeah, gosh. I mean, there's so many things coming up for me as I'm listening to you. I mean, one thing that might be also coming up for other people is kind of this concept of the difference between soft skills and hard skills. I think this is another way we deconstruct ourselves and our lives in order to understand it better or to feel more comfortable, like we could fit into one domain or it's safer to be in one domain and there's clarity and certainty in that. I think that comes up a lot, potentially because I'm a woman and, there is a undeniable association of women with soft skills, which I want to, push back against. And I feel like I have, my whole life. That's the contrarian and stubborn part of me. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's like it goes both ways. So when you are desiring fulfillment and success and like this idea of balance maybe or ease, there is a requirement that not only do we do what you're kind of alluding to, Anne, which is learn how to listen to our gut, learn how to listen to the signals of the body, learn how to interpret what we are experiencing or thinking through the body, because it gives us, I mean, it's just another data point, right? I mean, ultimately, if we think about it from a very analytical perspective, it's like another very big data point that can guide us and support us. So kind of coming from the inside out, which I think is harder for people because it does get into the like, well, that's very woo woo, listen to your gut, listen to your intuition. And I'm always a little hesitant to use the word intuition for that reason. But for me, it's not intuition. It's like a deeper listening. It's like a deeper knowing. It's something else to guide me than just my brain, because what I know is I cannot always trust my mind. I have to have other data points and the body is one. The nervous system is one. It tells us it's physiologically responding to whether or we feel safe or not all day long, constantly without us knowing about it. And if we're ignoring those signals, we're ignoring a huge amount of information that can guide us to making decisions that are not only like right decisions, right, that get us where we want to go, but feel better. Like, don't you want to feel better in the process of achieving, of doing, of, like, God, wouldn't that be great? So there's like, for me, the embodiment is like, yes, the inner, the inside. But then I'm also thinking an embodied business is one that honors the body, honors the physical health, honors the biology. So I've always really, really been compelled by this idea that my work life, my professional life, and my personal life do not have to be separate. They don't have to be bifurcated, but they can be a reflection of each other. And the healthier I am in my personal life, the healthier I am in my physical body, the healthier I am in my business, the healthier my business is, the healthier my relationships are. So it's also from an outside perspective of, can I bring the health of my body into the equation as a part of what keeps my business healthy? So it's very powerful for me. And I feel like I don't want to live a bifurcated life or even a compartmentalized life. I want to skillfully feel like they are in support of each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because it doesn't mean that you are a hot mess, or it doesn't mean that your private life is all over the place.
Yeah, right.
Because I think right, it's not about oversharing or being like super over vulnerable in inappropriate ways.
Yeah.
Because Yeah, because you have a very rich private life, of which I sometimes see a bit of or know a bit of. But, I also think that you also have a private life that is private.
Yeah.
and yet for as long as I've known you, you've always been like, and, and I don't want this bifurcation and I want to have my life and my business. But I think when I first heard that, I think sometimes I had this thought of like, oh, well, then that means you're going to be one of those people who, puts their private life in their business and it's like messy. And that's not what we're saying.
No. I mean, you can do it badly.
Sure. Yeah.
Do it skillfully. And I'm not talking about exposure.
Right.
I'm talking about alignment of values. I'm talking about, I want to work on myself as a human being, both from a physical perspective and a psychological and spiritual perspective. And I want to bring all of that into the work that we do with our relationship, you and I. Like the work doesn't stop, right? The work continues, and the work you and I do carries over into the work that I do at home.
Right.
There is, so for me, that's what it means. It's not like, there certainly is a separation between what I share. I mean, privacy is not the same as being aligned or having, work and life be in support of one another. It's a very different concept. And I think what I love about the three areas of work that we do, education, business, and behavior change, is that to me, that's the ultimate expression of how to support myself in being in work that feels really valuable and aligned to me personally and is valuable to the people that we work with. And then we get to teach them how to do that, right? I always say, like, first and foremost, I think of myself as a teacher. So the education piece is so important. And then we bring the behavior change through neuroscience and through the nervous system science. And it's like, it just like skyrockets it out of into a whole different galaxy. Because I feel like in that realm, we're really saying it's not just about curriculum design. It's not just about business strategy, but it's about how do you tend to yourself in the process, and how do you support your clients and your students in also being on that journey in the process. It just feels very holistic, I think.
Yeah. I'd love to share an example about, and I'd love for those of you listening, either now or in the future, to reflect on this. This is a conversation, I'm going to build off a conversation that you and I had earlier today, where Chantel and I were having, we were talking rather passionately about something within our business. And I was reflecting back to her. I said, well, like I have some other stress or some other things that are coming up that I think are impacting my reaction to this. Mm-hmm. And so, because the reality is I would love to know if anybody has this superpower, like if you have a work stress or a family stress, that it doesn't impact the other half of your life, right? Like, I don't think stress chooses.
Right. No way, because stress this is it. Like stress expresses itself through the body. So if you don't think it makes a difference, you're delusional. I mean, I'm just like, that is my very strong, soapbox opinion, because it's in your body and you're carrying it around.
Right. Yeah. You're carrying it from, if you work in an office, you're carrying it from the office into your kitchen, into your bedroom, into your bed, like from your phone, like wherever you are. And I think that for so many times, like I remember going to a, like, I don't know, a lecture or some seminar or workshop about work-life balance at the Harvard Business School, and hearing about all of these women talk about it. But it's like, and how to like put up boundaries and I'm like, yes, you can do that to a point. Like, yes, there is a point in which, you stop responding to emails, or you don't look and you turn it off, but there's residual. Yes. And the residual is carried with you. Yes. And so, and so you can put up boundaries, but I mean, unless you're attending to yourself and you're thinking about, and when we talk about embodiment, it's the body and the mind. So it's the stress is like, mental health, but that is also absolutely completely your physical health as well. So I think when I think of embodied business, there's a couple different ways. So obviously so I think before I move forward on that, my question to those of you listening is, when has there been a time when there has been stress either at home or at work and it impacted your other part that you're in? Or when has there been a great joy either at home or at work and it has impacted, right? And just see if that never transferred over, and I have these boundaries and, et cetera. I just kind of think a lot of that it's just kind of lip service that it's not gonna transfer over, or that a boundary, some sort of boundary that you put on yourself versus a culture of boundaries, that, you alone and your own boundary is going to stop some stress bleeding into other areas.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about this concept of when you put up a boundary that's almost arbitrary, because you think you should, or somebody says this is how you manage work-life balance, and you don't really it doesn't maybe actually mean something to you. You can't feel your way into, because there's, in my opinion, in my experience, there is a compassionate, soft, and yet incredibly rooted, immovable way of creating a boundary. And it is when the boundary comes from within me, from a knowing within me, from a inquiry about is this something I care about, and how much effort am I going to put into creating the boundary? Because then the boundary is very natural. It's very organic. It's very easy. It's and for me, that is when the boundary is a reflection of how I want to live as a human, how I want to be in relationship with everybody, not just my business, not just you, not just our clients. And so there's an effortlessness in that. There's an ease. It's the boundary is not hard to uphold. The boundary is very natural, but that requires all of the data points to be at work and firing, because otherwise what we see a lot of is drawing the hard lines, and the effort with which it takes to uphold the boundary.
Yeah, it's more effort than not having the boundary.
Yes. Yes, it's you're trying to overcome a force that takes so much effort and attention that it actually creates more stress and more tension in yourself. So this is an example of if you are building and working in an embodied business, boundaries are effortless. And if you are not, they are probably feeling a lot harder to either establish or to maintain.
Yeah, absolutely. I just remember so many times people will put this boundary up or put that boundary up. And it was just well, logically that makes sense. But if there's no felt sense, and I think that's a lot of that concept of embodiment, and there's no self-trust behind it.
Yes.
It falls flat. And then there's so much effort to hold up the boundary.
Yes. Yeah. Self-trust. That's really beautiful. I mean, it's totally true. That might just be the crux of it. Yeah.
Well, I've loved this conversation about boundaries. And now we'll talk about the intersection of education, business, and
let's do that.
Behavior change. So setting boundaries, that's behavior change, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And choosing to do it from a sense of I'm not going to put up a bunch of other walls just to hold up this boundary that somebody said I should have, versus one of the ways that I have over time in a very organic way is come to my own terms of this concept of what's outside, what can you not control, and I just, so for one example is I think I was really trying to control, that I could work longer into the evening as I was sort of balancing my kids. And I was just I'm not doing a good job on either front.
Mm.
And so I'm just going to create that boundary for myself. Do I break the boundary? Sure. Do I still have behaviors of wanting to squeeze more work in because I love my work and getting tasks done makes me feel good? Yes, but the fact that I've communicated that with my team, the fact that I have a team that supports me in it, and it's really helpful. So, but I've been told that before, but it had to come from my own self to say that. So that's been a really good example, I think, of making a behavior change that feels more organic and natural in this sense that I'm in a toward state. Like I'm excited and interested to see if I can do it versus how can I do this thing how can I hold up this boundary that I'm supposed to hold?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very different type of feeling.
Yeah. So the ways in which we integrate behavior change, which comes from both neuroscience, Anne and I are both certified brain-based coaches through the Neuroleadership Institute, and we lean into the nervous system science, a lot of polyvagal informed work from a variety of sources. And the way this plays out, I love this piece because it's like inescapably a part of all of what we do, right? When we work with a private client in business strategy and development, we work with a client who is trying to develop education. What we know is that the nervous system needs to be tended to. And so we do the work of creating psychological safety, physiologically safe in internal environments and external environments in the way that we work. And then we, to varying degrees, depending on the context, we teach educators and coaches and leaders how to do the same thing for their people. So an example might be when we are helping somebody with a curriculum design, developing education or offers, that we are aware of the importance of psychological safety, and we can bring the science of the nervous system and the brain to that to teach people how to create psychological safety through the nervous system. And there are many, many ways to do this in their education, in their curriculum design. It's a critical piece. And we find that when we do that, people get more engagement. They are more able to engage. They are more motivated. They are able to cultivate more intrinsic motivation in their learners, and they get better conversion in their courses. And so it's deeply woven into the curriculum design. And then we do this really cool thing with our business development clients. And not all of this is like so segmented, right? Many people work with us in all three domains. And so there is an overlap, but for clarity's sake, I think it's helpful to see how the pieces influence one another. We do something really cool called a nervous system business map, where we really support entrepreneurs and leaders in understanding how their nervous system impacts their business choices and helping them to create safety so that they can make better choices or take new action. Because if you don't feel safe, the new action is pretty damn near impossible, or again, requires so much effort that you can't sustain it. Yeah, and then we're just flat out teaching people how to facilitate nervous system work and behavior change. So this is particularly relevant if you're an educator or a coach where you're trying to impact and support or facilitate change, no matter what the domain is. And we do that through the Nervous System Integration Facilitator Training Program. And that is, of course, very close and dear to my heart. Absolutely. So that's the behavior change piece.
Yeah, and I'd love to share some examples of behavior change for our listeners. So, one example that if you come from any sort of health or wellness background, a lot of times if you're a service provider, you support the person when they come in, and then there's activity or changes that they need to make to their life so that they stay well, or so that their performance improves, or they're out of pain, or they have less gut issues, or autoimmune situations, or chronic illness or disease. And it's not easy to make behavior change, especially when you're talking to, busy, stubborn adults. Like it's not, it takes, it can take something, it just takes a lot, and it doesn't have to if you sort of know, so if you're asking somebody within your business or within your field of expertise to make a behavior change, if you don't understand how behavior change works or how to support people, and a behavior change could be do X exercises before you come return to me, drink so much water, take this medication, walk after dinner, like, if you're, have more sex, like it depends on your domain, like what you're teaching people. Yeah. Right? Like
look at your bank account, track your finances.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Money and sex. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what's more important?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right. Like that's just a behavior change, right?
Yeah.
And what we know, I was kind of nerding out about this because I think it like showed up on my feed, was like the longevity. Recently there's a book that's come out. I think it's like The Secrets of Longevity. And he just sort of says, I'm not remembering the author's name off the top of my head, but essentially, I think there's like 5 or 7 concepts. And I was watching a brief, hearing about something, how it got him on the news or something. And he's basically like, yeah, for sure, it's your genes, but a lot of it is just your behaviors or incremental behavior changes that you make over your life, over decades. And, I think if you're an entrepreneur or someone who loves their career, like part of your job is you want to make money so you can enjoy your life. But if you are really unhealthy, if you're very unhealthy while you're making that money, you're not going to live long to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right?
The cost is so high.
Exactly. The cost is too high.
Yeah.
And so we want to, behavior change is just, it's like we're swimming in it all around. Or if you have children or parents that you're trying to influence and have them develop healthy behaviors, it's all around.
Yeah. I feel like we should wrap this piece up, and then in the next episode, let's dive into education and business a little bit more.
Love to.
So because I think we just have so much to say, and I want to really honor people's like time resources. I was recently in a conversation with a bunch of people from the Polyvagal Institute, and we were talking about this idea of co-regulation and self-regulation in relationship to behavior change. Specifically, like if you and I are engaged in a relationship, let's say a contracted relationship where I'm the coach and you're the coachee, or teacher and student, whatever it might be, you're helping me to do something, that ability to build trust between us is a physiological piece. It's physiological, not just psychological. And it can be psychological, it can be kind of intellectual, and it's less likely that the person we're trying to get to change the behavior is going to actually do the things required.
Yeah.
However, if we can tap into the psychological and physiological safety that's created through healthy nervous system co-regulation, that builds a deeper level of trust in which the coachee or client or student feels safe enough to go out and self-regulate, basically do the shit on their own.
Yeah.
Right? and change the behavior, not just have to be in our presence
to change the behavior
in order to change. Yes. And so this is huge. And as Anne was saying, like it's everywhere. It infiltrates every domain. So that is such an exciting piece for us, and such a pivotal part of the Embodied Business Institute. So stay tuned. We'll release our next live episode here in the Facebook group. And maybe if you're not in the Facebook group and you're hearing this many, many weeks later, you want to join the Facebook group so you can get the episodes live. Otherwise, you got to wait 4 to 6 weeks. I think that's it. It's always just such a pleasure to have these deep conversations with you and not be talking about business, like
business ops.
The operations, which is fine too. But these moments are so special, and I really appreciate it. And I'm so glad we're doing this in the Facebook group again. And I look forward to next time.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.